The Cincinnati Bengals enter RFK Stadium in Washington needing a victory. A loss, and the only chance they would have of making the playoffs would be in the hands of other teams. So to be masters of their own fate, they have to set their sights on a solid Redskins team and hope that their powerful offense, led by one of the NFL's hottest quarterbacks, Boomer Esiason, can penetrate the third toughest defense in the league. In 1985, Esiason has rapidly become one of the most efficient and one of the most explosive passers around. He's completed nearly 60% of his passes, and more importantly, his interception rate is the second lowest in the league. But it's tough to beat the Redskins at home, particularly when they need the win just as badly to remain in playoff contention. Washington's offense is now in the hands of young Jay Schroeder, and the young man has responded well, leading the Redskins to victories in 3 of their last 4 games. The feature back is now George Rogers, number 38. In the stretch drive, it will no longer be the Diesel driving his way through defenses, sustaining the Redskins' offense. John Riggins, at age 36, may well be making his curtain call in 1985. But more important matters are at hand. In a must-win game for both teams, it's the Redskins hosting the Bengals on the NFL Game of the Week. The game began with an offensive bang. Jay Schroeder going deep for Art Monk, number 81. The 48-yard reception by Monk was the first of what would be many big catches by the NFL's leading wide receiver. For now, it set up the contest's initial score, this short burst by George Rogers, number 38. With less than 4 minutes gone by in the opening period, the Redskins had jumped in front 7-0. It would be the only time Washington would be ahead until the game's final minutes. In their previous 2 games, the Bengals had scored 95 points, due in large part to an offensive scheme that featured no huddle. Against the Redskins, the Bengals used the same strategy, and it worked to perfection. Their first offensive possession caught Washington by surprise, and the Bengals quickly and easily covered 77 yards in just 4 plays, 2 of them Boomer Esiason completions. This 56-yard pass play to number 86 Steve Kreider was followed by a bit of Bengal razzle-dazzle. And again, the Redskins were badly fooled. Running back James Brooks flipped an 8-yard scoring toss to Eddie Brown. And dramatically, the Bengals had tied the game. Only 5 minutes had elapsed and already 2 touchdowns had been scored. The frantic offensive pace would continue, but unfortunately for the Redskins, they would be the victims of a first-quarter spree by Cincinnati that would leave them gasping for air. Redskin troubles mounted on the kickoff when their attempt at chicanery fooled no one. Certainly not Leo Zander, number 91. Things went from bad to worse when Rogers, looking to establish Washington's grueling running game, fumbled, and the man on the spot was Bengals rookie linebacker Emmanuel King. Turning the ball over was something the Redskins could not afford to do against an explosive offense like Cincinnati's, and the Bengals and Boomer wasted no time in capitalizing. The first play following the turnover was this scoring pass from Esiason to number 82 Rodney Holman, and suddenly the Bengals had a 14-7 lead. It was still only midway through the first quarter, so there was no reason for Washington to abandon its game plan of pounding Rodgers into the heart of a vulnerable Bengals defense, one of the weakest in the NFL. But Cincinnati was stingy in this must game, not allowing Rodgers much room to maneuver. Following their opening touchdown drive, the Redskins had not been able to generate much offense. But what hurt even more was that they continued to turn the ball over. Even their special teams got into the act of giving Cincinnati more opportunities. Number 28, Darrell Green, ended this strong punt return with a fumble. And for the second time in the first quarter, the Bengals recovered. And again for the second time, the Bengals followed the turnover with a touchdown on the very next play. And again, it was Esiason to tight end Rodney Holman, this time for 51 yards. The Bengals were simply pouring it on Washington. The first quarter ended 21-7. And then when period 2 got underway, Esiason went right back to the air, nailing Chris Collinsworth, number 80, for 47 more yards. The Redskins finally prevented Cincinnati from getting into the end zone, but the Bengals still added to their impressive advantage with this 38-yard field goal by Jim Breach. 2 minutes into the second period, the Bengals had a surprising 24-7 lead. On the road at Washington, one of the NFL's toughest places for a visitor, Cincinnati was in total command. Things would soon start to change, however. The Bengals had a chance to put this game away early in the second quarter, but they could not deliver the knockout punch. Perhaps the game's biggest play, the one that kept Washington alive and kicking, was this end zone interception by number 22, Curtis Jordan. A Cincinnati score there, and the Redskins would have trailed by more than 3 touchdowns. But it remained 24-7, and the Redskins still had life. The man who would then spark the resurgence was one of the NFL's most consistent performers week in and week out, wide receiver Art Monk, number 81. After a record-setting season in 1984, Monk has labored in relative obscurity this year. But in the last month, with Washington making a run at a wild-card playoff spot, Monk has emerged as the most productive wide receiver in all of football. This 48-yard catch, his second of the day, put the Redskins into position to score for the first time since the game's opening moments. The drive ended with none other than Monk grabbing a touchdown pass from Schrader, and the Redskins were back in it at 24-14. The Redskins' defense now had to shut down the passing of Boomer Esiason, and they did just that with a strong pass rush featuring a key third down sack by number 78, Dean Hamill. Cincinnati was forced to punt, and with just over 2 minutes remaining in this explosive first half, the Redskins' Darrell Green made up for his earlier fumble by taking this kick and casually racing 77 yards for an apparent touchdown. The Redskins had appeared to edge ever closer to Cincinnati, but the appearance was deceiving. This joyous end zone celebration ended rather abruptly when a penalty for unnecessary roughness was whistled against Washington, wiping out the spectacular effort of Green and the entire special teams unit. But the Redskins had rebounded from their first quarter debacle, not letting the competitive phase of this game end before halftime. Mark Mosley ended the half with a 42-yard field goal, and the Redskins would go into the locker room trailing by only 7, 24-17. In the second half, with their entire season at stake, they would rise to the occasion. The war yells were loud and clear from the Washington faithful as the second half got underway. Their once docile Redskins were now clearly on the warpath, and after holding Cincinnati on its first series, they got good field position on yet another solid punt return by Darrell Green. Several short runs from George Rogers moved Washington in closer. But then on 3 straight pass attempts, the Bengals secondary clamped down and did not allow a completion. So from 39 yards away, Mark Mosley stepped in and connected on his second field goal of the afternoon. But it would be the last time Mosley tasted success in the game. The Bengals now held only a slim 4-point lead and had to do something quickly to cool off the red-hot Redskins. Esiason temporarily restored order by scrambling to get some yardage, then let his running backs pick up more ground on their own on a series of several successful rushing plays. But then the boys from D.C. stopped any further Cincinnati advance by quickly penetrating to stop the same running game that had been so effective against them just moments before. On a 4th and 2, Cincinnati gambled when they called on James Brooks on a sweep around right end. But Darrell Green and Raphael Cherry turned the play into a big loss. Many times in recent weeks, the Bengals had tried daring, unconventional strategy and were successful. But this time, their boldness did not pay off. So while Coach Sam Weish was working up new schemes with the offensive unit on the sidelines, he kept one eye on his defense, hoping that it could finally stem the Washington onslaught that had produced 3 unanswered scores. Much to his pleasure, Sam got his wish, as the Redskins were halted when they tried some razzle-dazzle of their own. Art Monk proved to be a better receiver than a runner as the Redskin double reverse was shut down. Then Washington's stock soared when their defense swiped a pass off an Esiason rollout. Following Raphael Cherry's interception, Jay Schrader quickly went to work, taking advantage of good field position by spotting Gary Clark open over the middle. Then Schrader surpassed even that feat when he feathered a toss that appeared to give Washington its first lead since early in the game. Tight end Clint Didier, number 86, was wide open for the score. But that was because the officials ruled Clint had pushed off on his defender Jimmy Turner, number 35. With this offensive pass interference call, it marked the second time in the game that the Redskins had a touchdown negated by a penalty. The ruling was a bitter pill to swallow, but things got even worse when the Redskins settled for a field goal, only to have Mark Mosley knock his attempt wide left. Instead of 7 or even 3 points, Washington ended up empty-handed. 13 minutes still remained in the game, plenty of time for either team to win. The Bengals had a reprieve, and the Redskins felt just plain unlucky. But all that would change in just a few minutes. Statistically, Boomer Esiason was having one of those performances that should be framed and hung on the wall. 22 of 39 for 357 yards and 2 touchdowns against the second-best pass defense in pro football. But for some reason, the Bengals turned to their running game in the late stages of the contest, and it simply wasn't as effective as when the Boomer was passing. Then Cincy gambled with another gadget play, and this one turned into a full-fledged gold-plated disaster. Chris Collinsworth fumbled the ball away off a triple reverse, and Barry Wilburn recovered it for Washington. It proved to be the turning point of the game. Now all the Redskins, and pregame hero John Riggins in particular, watched with keen interest to see if the team could capitalize. This they did, and the hero was Riggo's heir apparent as Washington's singleback, number 38 George Rogers. With one quick burst, George was off to the races, putting Washington on top for good. Rogers' 34-yard touchdown run was his second score of the day. It helped to atone for 3 earlier fumbles he had coughed up. While some may have felt that putting Riggins in at this time might have given Washington an emotional lift, Coach Joe Gibbs stayed with Rogers, and it paid off. The play worked because the Bengal defenders were bunched in tightly on a 3rd and short situation. All would-be tacklers flew in to make the stop, and once George breezed past them, it was an easy run to the end zone. The Redskins led by a field goal and soon had the ball back again. Art Monk then made another clutch catch, helping to lift his game total to 13 receptions, a team record. Now Washington had a chance to increase its lead to 6, which would force the Bengals to have to score a touchdown to win. But such plans went astray when Mosley missed again, this time from 39 yards out. The Bengals could now tie the game with a field goal of their own, or even win the affair outright with a touchdown. Enough time remained on the clock for just such an effort. Both team seasons were now on the line. This was the drive that would keep one club in the playoff picture and push the other one practically out of contention. The Boomers started off strongly by avoiding a sack and making a big completion on the run. Esiason then scrambled for more yardage, making sure he got out of bounds to stop the clock. After a few more completions, the Bengals found themselves just outside the Redskin 20. But on 3rd down, Cincinnati committed the one mistake they did not want to make, and it ended up costing them the game and their season. The interception and run back by number 78 defensive tackle Dean Hamill was wiped out because Esiason had been ruled in the grasp of sacking linebacker Rich Malott. But the damage had been done. Instead of a reasonable 38-yard field goal attempt on 4th down, Bengal kicker Jim Breach was forced to try his luck from 50 yards, a considerable difference. The attempt fell short, and the Bengals' playoff chances faltered with it. Washington had survived 27-24 to keep their playoff hopes alive. They would need another win and some help to get in, while the saddened Bengals will require a miracle of almost biblical proportions to participate in postseason action. In the end, it was fewer Washington mistakes, timely running from George Rogers, and the pass-catching wizardry of a man named Monk that helped the Redskins live to fight another day.